Welcome to episode 87 of Beer with Strangers. I'm your host, Tony Russo, and I'm joined this week, as I'm joined each week, by my co host, Doug Griffith.
Good afternoon, Tony, and welcome to Extreme Brewing. I'll give the normal weather report. Today is cloudy and a little windy. It's not like it was yesterday. Man, it just roared here.
Yesterday was brutal.
Um, Fortunately, we didn't have any bad weather here as they did down south, but we didn't have any tornadoes, so
Yeah.
it was good.
Well, we had a tornado warning and a tornado watch, which meant that my wife called me every 14 seconds. Are you leaving yet? Tell me when you're leaving. And so then she grew up in Cincinnati, and
Oh,
so they had tornadoes were a thing. Like for me, they're just something that I see on the Wizard of Oz. I've never been around like an
I haven't
actual
either.
tornado. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. So
Sound like down Louisiana and Florida, Pensacola area, they had terrible tornadoes yesterday,
yeah, so
previous night.
but we did okay, and now so we were having Mexican food last night. When I say Mexican food, I mean my wife added beans and spicy stuff to macaroni sauce. Not really, but and so I forgot to tell her that I was stopping for beer, and then I always get lost in the beer aisle. It's a problem. I'm like, well, what do I want? What do I want? What do I want? And then she's like, where are you? I guess she assumed I'd been sucked up by a tornado, but I was just sucked up by a beer tornado. Um, so that was my evening. That was
So,
my.
what did you choose?
I ended up going with the Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. I don't know why. Okay, so the new problem with distribution is they don't keep the cans cold.
Oh,
So
okay.
if you want a can of beer, you have to be prepared in advance.
To take it home,
Yeah, right. So you're not
or
gonna
you have an ice chest in your
in my car
car,
just in
and
case
throw
I
it
want to
in that.
stop for a
Right,
six
right.
pack on the way home.
And then by the time you get home, it's cold.
Well, what I think I really might start to do, and I did it for a while and then I stopped. I might throw a growler back in my car because I probably should have just blown by. Like Third Wave is just a block from my house, and that's what I'm like. I should just go and pick up some
But
Shore Break
you're
or something
coming
like
home.
that.
You can stop at Burley.
I got
You can stop at Tall Tales.
Tall Tales, Evo,
Yeah, I mean, you got
Rubber
choices.
Soul.
Yeah,
There are five. Yes, I have five breweries between my house and my office, which is
a growler would do you well.
yeah. There's no point in not having one. So I'm gonna have to start carrying a growler again.
And another thing, this time of year, you can actually get your can of beer the previous night. You leave it in your car; it's going to be cool for the next night.
Right. Well, the thing is, I didn't
That
have
won't
a
work summertime, but
I didn't have a taste for it until she told me what we were having for dinner, and I'm
okay.
like, oh, all right.
and actually yesterday wasn't the best day because it got in the mid 60s here yesterday,
yeah,
and now it's back down to maybe 50 today.
and that's where the tornadoes come from.
Because it was warm.
The air going up and down will drive you crazy. So that was my dinner beer dilemma. I've been laying off the beer because I've hit a plateau, but sometimes you just like I also had to start the taxes last night. So taxes plus Mexican food means stop
Drive
and
you to drink.
stop. Yeah, get some beer. Why? What do you? I owe it to myself. So those were our big adventures from last night. But what I wanted to talk about, we're going to start off with the homebrew portion of the show from now on.
Okay.
And that's just going to be the rules. So that way we don't run out of time.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about your what was it, Love event?
The Love on Craft on Beer, the Love on Tap.
Love on Tap, yes.
Right. But let's start with your Roush beer. It came out, is out.
Yeah, we had a all grain brewing demonstration last week, and Sean wanted to do a Roush beer, which is a smoked beer. So he came up with the recipe. He used some beet smoked malts plus some cherry smoked, and we're going to test it here just before Tony gets out of here today to taste and see what it's like. But I had a taste yesterday. They both tasted good, but because we put them on two yeast or put two yeast on them, fermented them with two different yeasts, each of them has a different taste. One, the smoke is more pronounced than the other. So it's just amazing the differences that the yeast make in the beer. So.
And you guys do that? You do that every year, or is that just you've been doing that more and more recently, trying out, showing people how the yeasts work differently?
Right. Whenever we do a batch, generally they're 10-gallon batches, and it just is easy to do because you generally separate them into 2 5 gallon batches to ferment. And if you use different yeast, you just see what the results are for 2 different yeast. And a lot of people think, well, yeast is yeast, but it makes a big difference.
Yeah, it makes a significant difference. And it's always a pleasure to try. I forget what you did last year. You did a dark beer last year as well with two different yeasts, and one was almost like Guinness when it was done. It was
Yeah,
maybe it was
yeah.
a stout of some sort, and the other one was bitter. Was it bitter? Was that the difference?
I think one of them, yes, it was more bitter because it dried the beer out
Oh
more, so there
right,
was less sugars left in it, um, and just that makes the beer more bitter because there are sugars where one didn't attenuate or didn't eat up as many sugars, so that it was sweeter and more. I think those were stouts at the time, and
right.
more what you expected a stout to be. One was dry and one was a little sweet. So
And so, is there a way to decide what are there yeasts that just won't work with a particular beer taste wise, or is it like
probably yes, there are. I would say, but as things go anymore, you try different things, and whatever seems to work, you use.
right,
Used to be with wheat beers, you would use a yeast designed more for wheats because you get some of the clovey stuff out or bananoies out on the wheat beers. But even these days, you can use them in any beer, and it gives you different results. Sometimes not what you expect, but if it
if you like
tastes,
it,
yeah, if you like it, do it.
right?
That's the way the craft beer
Has
seems
been
to be going anymore. You know,
people aren't afraid to take chances
right, right.
anymore. And again, I don't mind. I mean, I put it in my book, which is due out in May. I'm like you can't if you don't fail big occasionally, you're never going to succeed big.
Well,
And
most of the breweries do release small, like
right,
homebrew size batch
and
and test
just
it,
try
make
out
sure it's
stuff.
right. If it turns out right, then they'll go bigger.
Right. And speaking of bananas and speaking of going bigger and speaking of Love on Tap, I got a chance to try the Bad Banana Porter. It was good. It wasn't as sweet as I was afraid that it was going to be because I was afraid it was going to be
Now,
sweet.
who made that?
Vince Wright
Oh,
did
okay,
from
all right.
Fin City,
Yeah,
but he said that they used actual bananas. He said it's not going to be they're not going to do many of them because he
a
said
lot of peeling.
yeah, well, and also
All right.
it was a mess, and it was very, very, very
Yeah,
expensive to soak the bananas, and to use actual bananas instead of a banana extract or one of those yeasts because the one that you guys do a banana beer, a banana porter that there's no banana in, it's just the
it's from the yeast.
just from
Yeah.
the yeast.
Well,
Uh,
we actually the dirty banana, which is it's got some chocolate in it, but it pairs good with the yeast, the T58 yeast, Belgian yeast that gives you that banana flavor, and it seems to pair fairly well with that chocolate.
yeah, and the
And
one that Vince did was perfectly acceptable.
yeah,
It was a good beer.
that's the way we came up with the dirty banana.
Right.
So,
But Love on Tap was a huge success. We had just
now,
we
for those who don't know,
oh
Love on Tap was at Secrets in Ocean City, Maryland.
right, it was a beer festival, a winter beer festival, and I think it was a huge success. There were a couple of little snags, and it's one of those things where you hate to see something go wrong, especially when you're like, this is going to go wrong, and no one will listen to you. So nothing went wrong. A couple people ran out of beer, um, and this isn't giving Secrets too hard a time, but they have a relationship with some distributors and no relationship with other distributors. So the distributors they had a relationship with, they're like, bring all the beer you can, and then you just have to take back anything we don't use. But they didn't feel comfortable asking the other distributors to do that, so some people ran out of beer. It was tough. Lori ran out of beer from Third Wave. Miss Pillion ran out of beer, and
I think it's fantastic. First year event, you had 800 people out for an event in the end of or mid
right, and then
February
and
in Ocean City.
it was really good. The hotels were very, very happy. Secrets was ecstatic. I think I said it before. The other reason that they were worried about ordering too much beer is the last time they had a beer festival, they had 150 people show
Wow.
up. So, but we were really out banging the drum. I forget because I get into other things and I forget that people sometimes listen to people really do listen to this show. I mean, there's no one listening this very second, but they do download it and they do listen to it. and they do read the blogs and they do follow along what's going on. And when you say, hey, we're having a beer festival, it doesn't hurt that the one we did in October was such a huge success. We did one. Oh,
Right. We were
right.
there.
The one you were at
Yeah.
in October was a massive success, and because of that, we were able to we had the mailing list, and there were a lot of people on the mailing list who were like, yeah, we
They
had
came.
such a good
Yeah.
time last time. We're coming this time. And it was funny. And it was actually, I don't know if it was good or bad for my ego, but several people recognized me from my beer talk last time. They're like, hey, you're that beer book guy. So that was really, really cool. One of the dogfish pourers recognized me. And a couple of people, who one couple who bought the book from me and lived near the Boardley House in Pennsylvania, which is cool. That's one of the main guys in my book had a place in Pennsylvania,
Mm.
and they live near his place in Pennsylvania. So they're going to put me in touch, hopefully with the historical society there, and maybe they have a recipe for his beer. And even if they don't, maybe we can do some cross promotion where we
Pull it out of the air.
get a beer out of get a beer for him. But so that was
Yeah.
huge success. So thank you for everyone who came out. Anyone who didn't come out but would like to be invited to the next one, if you like the shorecraftbeer.com page, if you go to the website, you can sign up to be on the mailing list, and that's how we send out all of our notifications about the beer festivals. And you had a class on Saturday.
Yeah, our extract, or
The
all
extract.
grain,
Oh,
all grain brewing.
oh, the all grain was
That-
Saturday.
Yeah, that was Saturday. We
Oh.
made the Roush beer.
And now it's out now, or it's not. It's not done yet.
No, it's not done yet.
Oh.
It's fermenting, but I can get you a taste today.
Oh,
of
yeah, I
what
will-
it tastes like. It's almost done.
And we'll have it to taste for
The,
sure next week.
One was an ale, one was a lager. The lager is still fermenting, but we can still taste it.
Oh.
And then it needs to be lagered for about 3 weeks, and then we'll have it on tap.
Yeah, that's why I was confused when you said I thought we were talking about two different beers. So
You can taste the beer at any stage of its life.
it's beer, right? It's still
not done
beer.
yet, but we'll get a taste of it.
And speaking of waiting a long time for beer, one of the first stories we want to talk about this week comes from Italy, where they've rebooted a monastery to start producing beer again. And
Very interesting. I thought that was amazing. It's the Benedictine monks. They had, and actually, it's where Saint Benedictine was born. It's in a place about 100 miles northeast of Rome, Norcica, Norcia. But the beer is called beer Norcica, but it's Nursia, and I think it's just the translation between English and Italian. The
Right.
spelling's never
just to make
Yeah.
sure people are saying it right. Yeah, the cool thing I thought was that he and his sister. But I didn't know that Saint Benedictine had a sister, who was also a saint. So that was that.
Well, I didn't know that either.
Yeah, his sister Scholastica or something. And I'm like, that's a horrible name to give a little girl. No wonder she had to become a nun.
But these Benedictine monks have only had the monastery active for the last 15 years at this time. They had, I think it ran for 1,000 years, but for some reason, the monastery in Norcica stopped 200 years ago.
Right.
And then, but they in 2000 it started back up again, and it was mostly due to support from the United States. There's actually 12 monks there that are U.S. citizens, and I think there's a total of 19 monks. The rest are, I assume, Italian.
Right, just lay people.
What I read didn't really say, but it's still amazing. The main reason for having the brewery is to fund the monastery, which is great.
And that was always the case. Like that's one of the first things
Yeah.
beer ever did was fund monasteries. People, the monks would, because I mean, who's got more time on their hands to watch, to watch things boil than monks? And also,
And knowledge-wise, they have the knowledge to do these.
They know all the
things that
chemistry and the
us lay
science of
people
it.
didn't. Many-
Yeah, back in the Middle Ages,
Yes.
and they had the prayers going on to count time, so they always knew how long things were because they had a person saying Hail Marys all day. It's like, you go. Did you know that?
Yeah.
That was the early
Oh,
clocks. There was a monk. And his job was to say the Hail Mary or what to say a prayer all day, and then you know after he'd said 100 of them, let's say, that meant an hour had passed,
oh,
and then
okay.
another monk would come on and he'd do it for an hour or whatever.
I found another thing also. They had produced a CD a couple years ago that you can actually still get of chants of all the monks chanting.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's cool. I have a Gregorian chant album, but I do you remember that was very popular in the 1980s.
Hmm.
I have that. I found it at a used bookstore or whatever. But I'll get my hands on the Benedictine
Yeah.
beer chant because that should be fun to listen to.
But they're making two beers. Let's go back to the beers.
Right. Yes.
They're
Absolutely.
making two beers, a blonde beer and an extra, which is a dark ale, about 10%. I think the blonde's about 6, and the other one's 10%. You can actually reserve your beer if you want to get it here. It's on en route as we speak, being shipped. How much I'm not sure, but they're going to start distribution here in sometime in March. They anticipate having all pre-orders filled by the end of March, and then you can actually sign up to get monthly distributions if you want. Either 6
Wow.
or 12 bottles. And they're in 750 milliliters.
And they're only, I say only because of the demand. They're only doing 3,000 bottles a day or whatever, right? They have a
Something,
10
yeah.
barrel system, or was it 10 barrel, 7 barrel?
Wasn't, yeah, I didn't get the size of it.
It was three. Well, they were doing 3,000 bottles a day,
Yeah.
so it wasn't much. I feel like that's 10. Is that 10? I don't know.
Yeah.
7 barrels or 10 barrels. Point is, it's not very much beer for distributing. Internationally, usually. So I was wondering, did you go onto the website? Do you know how much the beer is?
85 for 6, I think it was. About $15 a bottle.
It's not outrageous.
No, it's not. I think if you sign up for a period of time, they're giving you glasses and something else and a certificate.
I don't know.
Now it's time to do it. I mean, it's
Yeah,
brand new.
before it gets hot, I might do it myself only because as I said as we were going on air, I did my taxes last night, and it was weird to see how much beer was tax deductible. There was an amount of tax deductible beer, and when you're feeling bad about yourself and you get to look at your tax statements and say, "Wow, I spent pretty much, I guess, a third of what I spent on beer last year um, was ended up being tax deductible."
Great.
Yeah, it was. Well, I mean, just that's one of the things I
Part
always
of
say
your
is,
job.
yeah, it's my job. If I go there, I'm going to write about it, and especially if I buy a beer, I'm definitely going to write about it because it counts. So yeah, so maybe I'll sign up. We'll do a couple podcasts on on the the beer, and then
Yeah.
thank you, Uncle Sam, for helping me to spread the word about this beer that we're importing. So, and it would violate my try to drink beer from within 100 miles of where you're made, but you feel like you got to
Yeah,
try.
it's just a little bit out of the
It's
range.
yeah,
Of 100 miles.
it's not too much to ask, and I figure it would be
But you
it'd
can
be worth
you can just do one time
right.
or get a 6-month subscription
Yeah.
and bring me some.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Like when you think about it, $80 a month, $85 a month is not that much, and
Well,
especially
six special beers.
yeah, I think it's worth it, as you said, at least once. But again, if you do it for 6 months and then you have like a little party where you get to taste them all, that'd be
Yeah.
I'll be a hero when I go back to New Jersey because they already get lots of really cool beers when I go up, so that'll be fun.
But the site was Beer Nursica, NURCIA, BIRRA,
Bira.
yeah, Bira.
And I was surprised. The other thing I'd ask is if you'd been. I guess that'll have to go on your list of places to go.
Not been there, but it's about 100 miles, like I said, east of Rome. The pictures I saw, it looks like it's a very interesting area. I think it's called the Umbria area of Italy, but it's very not huge mountains, but hilly.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. nothing like the Alps, but it's still hilly.
Right, because that's what it's kind of in central Italy. It's not. I would have
Right.
figured. I would have figured that it would be that it would have been um, closer to the Alps, closer to Switzerland or whatever.
No, it's not.
Just
I mean, it's like the Piedmont area. It's hilly too. So
right.
most lots of Italy is not flat.
I was just distracted out the window. There is a bird, and I was wondering if it was a bald eagle because we have a ton of them. We have a ton of bald eagles here, and they do just kind of hang around above the fields and
Yeah.
just
Did you
um,
hear about the ones that were killed in not too far from here,
yeah,
Fredericksburg?
yeah. I don't know what that was all about at all.
Don't know. The only thing I heard, they suspect that the Eagles got into something that had been poisoned.
Poisoned, yeah.
So
That they were trying to kill a fox, and they
yes.
got the eagles, and
But
that's too
there
bad.
was 15 of them. That's
Well,
unusual.
there were 13 of them, so that's I remember that.
13?
I remember that
13.
because
Okay.
I made a colony joke. I said maybe it was a weird sacrifice, one for each of the original
Ah,
colonies.
But that's unusual with that many dead bald eagles.
Right, but it's also unusual to have that many together. Like we're doing well. The bald eagles have come back
Yes.
in a big way,
Yes.
and they started them right here on Y Island, where they also started Maryland beer. So so we have a lot of them, and they do. It's still a little surprising to see when you're driving along, and I still will occasionally pull over
I do too.
and watch them
Yep.
when, especially when they're feasting on carcasses. That's cool, but when they're just kind of hanging in the air,
But they're um, what do you want to say? They scare away the vultures.
oh yeah,
They're competing with the vultures for food. So, but they generally reign. So
yeah, I think
they
they're
get first dibs on it because I think, like fresher stuff, but they'll eat anything that they can find. But the vultures want something that's been dead.
dead a while, yeah. And that's why when I saw the one just floating up in the air, usually when there are vultures, there are a couple, and when you
Yeah.
see one just out in the middle of a field, a lot of times it'll be a bald eagle. And so
They're
this has been,
great to watch fly.
yeah, beautiful, beautiful birds. They genuinely are, and you wonder like it's not surprising that they caught people's imagination because they are just really really impressive, huge, strong, good looking birds. So this has been Bald Eagle Talk.
Yep.
We're gonna move along to what was next on Budweiser, right? Oklahoma Budweiser. So sorry, pulling up. We're pulling up. And by we I mean me, are pulling up the story. So in Oklahoma, Anheuser-Busch is fighting to keep
King of beers.
the king of beers is fighting
king in Oklahoma.
to keep a two-tiered system and
Keep
not
their kingdom.
and not allow a third tier. The two things the legislature wants to do. The first thing they want to do is they want to make Budweiser divest its distributors there, so that the law will be you can't distribute your own beer, and that's what caught my interest because
I was based on that too. They're the two-tier system, but they're the
they're both tiers, yeah. And so that what I thought was interesting about that is that it works more. It's better for smaller breweries if they can distribute on their own if they want to. And so, one of the ways that they can keep smaller breweries from being competitive is by making sure that they can't self-distribute. However, in Oklahoma, apparently, you can buy 3.2%. I guess it's beer, and it's not. It's considered
the way
food.
I read that was anything under 3.2 is not considered beer.
Right, it's considered food.
And it's taxed at a whole different level.
And right now, Budweiser is the only company making this 3.2. Well, let's call it near beer. That's what they called it back in the 30s when they made this law. So selling the near beer, and I can't.
What does that mean? Do you still have to be 21 to buy it? I don't understand that.
I don't either. I remember they could buy near beer. Kids could buy near beer when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But it was. I mean, if you think regular beer is gross when you're a kid, you should try near beer. But I don't. I want to counsel my friends a little bit in Oklahoma. If you are so desperate for alcohol that you need to buy, a 24 pack of near beer, you may want to get into a program, because that's just it doesn't seem a point. Would I buy a 6-pack if I were in Oklahoma? Absolutely, and I would totally bring it home. But I can't I can't see the appeal of that unless it's very good. I mean,
That's possible.
it
Yeah,
could be good.
like
I
lawnmower beer, but you can drink it
yeah
all day long.
yeah. I mean, it could be good. I'm skeptical that, and this is being a little crappy, but I'm skeptical that Budweiser is making a very good 3.2% beer for mass distribution, but they could be.
They're
So
strictly against this
they're
changes.
they're very against it because the other thing that it would do is it would allow all beer to be sold in grocery stores, not just
87% of
right,
theirs in grocery
right,
stores
not
now.
just their
So
beer, but beer that's more than three point two
talk about
percent.
a monopoly.
Yeah, that's a crazy monopoly. And so it would kind of crack Oklahoma open for the craft beer market where it hasn't been doing great, but it's there in the Midwest where there are other really good, you know.
I think the thing is that you can get the near beer in the grocery stores, where if you want real beer, you got to go to packaged goods stores.
Right.
But more people shop in grocery stores, so I guess that's why they sell so much in the grocery store.
Right. And if you could buy beer in the grocery store, which I forget, can you do that in Delaware? Does Delaware have
No,
that? No.
no.
You can do it in Maryland, but Maryland doesn't. Again, this is just me. Maryland doesn't have much of a selection. I mean, increasingly they have a better selection, but you have to remember a grocery store is not a beer store like we're used to beer stores where you go in and there's a
Right.
beer aisle. You know, there's or there are several beer aisles in the grocery store. There's just one, and it's mostly the big production beers.
And maybe it's just the fact that they don't want to carry that much.
Right.
So, I mean, we've gone to, I think it's Total Wine in Baltimore, and they've got a huge
Yeah.
selection of beers.
And I think that's the difference. There are rows and rows of beers that you can get in some of the bigger beer and wine stores. But at grocery stores, they're like, if you really wanted beer, you'd go get it. You're just here to pick up a six pack, like me last night. Just what's wet and cold. I'm stopping off on my way home. What's wet? What's cold? Um, and what's already ready to go. So it'll be interesting to see. And it's also interesting in a state that you feel like if Budweiser has 87% of the market in Oklahoma, you would figure they would have the juice to kill this, but it looks like they might not.
That may be one of the reasons for just, it's too much monopoly.
Right.
The legislatures may say, you've got way too much more than what your share is.
And
But they're touting it. It's a big negative on their part because they lose 700 jobs.
right.
But those jobs, I think, would be divested someplace else.
Yeah,
Other people would be hired.
right. They would lose 700 employees. I'm sure someone else would start the new distribution companies that
Right.
would have to start up. And
And I guess they're including that over that 5-year period where they'd have to sell off their distribution.
right.
Somebody
And-
else would be picking it up, and I'm sure they're using those employees as
Yeah, middle managers
Yeah.
and oh, you mean it's like bargaining
Yeah.
chips? Yeah.
these
I'm
people.
sure that
Not saying that they're going to be rehired by whoever buys them.
right, but I can't imagine that isn't going to be the case. So I mean, we'll follow this story as it develops. But and it was interesting when I first wrote the post about this story. They changed the story out from under me, so I had written a post. And then they went back in and then they updated it. So I had written my story on February 18th. And on February 19th, they're like, here are the new facts. I'm like, well, that doesn't go with what I said anymore. So
It's changing as
yeah,
you're writing
speed
it.
kills. And oh, I wanted to talk about there's a
But
pairing store.
That's good. That gives you more to talk about.
Absolutely.
So-
And we did get more to talk about. There's a
Good
pairing
news.
story that I didn't get that I don't think we're going to get a chance to go over because I do want to talk about one other thing from the beer festival, which was the Not Your Daughter's Thin Mint beer, which was made by Fordham Dominion. And the reason I wanted to talk about that was because I like those guys. I like them. They're nice people. I was really a little worried and a little skeptical about
Were the Girl Scouts there selling
the
cookies?
Girl Scouts were not there selling cookies. And several people did come up to me and talk about this Girl Scout cookie pairing thing, which we'll talk about next week if we get to it at all. but the thin, not your, if you can get it went very quickly, and it's getting to be kind of a rare beer. So I don't know if
Was
you
it
can
an
get your
on
hands on it.
tap thing?
Yeah, it
You
was
might
on
be able to
tap.
find some throughout the state somewhere,
Right.
especially, I mean, in Delaware.
Right, in Delaware you can find it. And if you can find it, you should definitely try it. It was real good, and I was surprised because I'm always worried about these beers that they're going to be sweet. I think, and no offense to our friends that do Claw, but after that Sweet Baby Jesus, every time I taste an interesting beer, I'm always afraid it's going to be too
Sweet.
sweet, and I thought it, and so
Not my dad's root
or
beer.
not the dad's root
That's
beer,
sweet
same
too.
thing. It's very, very sweet. This was very flavorful, and it. I mean this is a compliment. It was almost gritty. I don't know if you've ever had, like, if your cookie broke off in the milk and then at the bottom of the milk it was like a little gritty. I don't know if they did it with the I think it was a combination of the carbonation and the flavors,
Oh, okay.
because you're used to
Wasn't really
having,
gritty.
no,
Just a,
it just had that
yeah.
weird mouthfeel because of the mint, which was so subtle. It wasn't like a thin mint where the mint bites your head off.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, no,
Sounded good.
it wasn't, and it wasn't real fragrant. It was a little tiny bit fragrant, and it was a little tiny bit minty, and it was a little tiny bit chocolatey. It was enough that you could say, yes, that's exactly what it is. But it wasn't so much that, like, if I walked by you, you'd be like, oh my God, what are you
Yeah.
drinking there?
Do you know if it was only on draft or did they have it also available for bottles?
I don't, I can't imagine that they didn't bottle it, because that's a
Unique flavor.
it really is. It really is. And I think that they maybe this year they test it out, and then next year they go big with it, because one of the things that I didn't know, and I don't know why, because everybody else does it as well. But I think the first Friday of every month they have a new cask tapping, and so they do a different beer every month, and some of them they do for production, and some of them they just do
brewery?
right there at the brewery. So I think this might have been from the brewery stash, because
Okay.
that was
And
one
for
of the
those who
beers.
don't know, brewery is in Dover.
Right, the brewery's right in Dover, right by the Air Force Base.
Yep.
And we had asked them, we tried to get word out to the breweries, like, bring more beer in case, kind of on the sly.
So did they run out of that one?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
and they also had their cherry blossom lager, which I didn't even get to taste, because by the time I was done taking tickets and got over there, that one was gone. That one went immediately. But that, I think everybody likes that beer. I don't know if you've had that.
It sounds like you need to delegate that ticket taking thing to somebody else, so you
Yes.
can hit the beers first.
Yes, absolutely. It was unavoidable, but hopefully it won't ever happen again, because that's really not my wheelhouse, being up front and talking to people. And that's the other thing I want to say about it. So I was working with one of the women from Seacrets who was also taking tickets, and I was just smiling and being pleasant, and she's like, you seem like you're in a real good mood, and I'm like, this is the crappiest day I've had at work yet. And she's like, what's going wrong? I'm like, nothing's going wrong. I'm like, that's how good my job is. Like, this is like, I won't get to drink beer for another hour. That's the worst my job is gonna get this year. And she's like, oh yeah, I can see why why you don't have anything to complain about. So there's that. And that'll bring us to the end of the show. Except, do we have classes? Do you have any classes coming up?
I don't remember now. No, unfortunately, I don't remember. Just
Sir.
check our website under everything else. We have a class schedule there. We are planning on having this is not beer related, but we're planning sometime next month have a wine get together in the evening like we did last year. But we will have other classes scheduled. So
Very cool. And I have nothing coming up either. My book is coming out, but it's not. But you can check out, as Doug said, go to extremebrewing.com, click under everything else, and click under podcasts, and that will take you to the Shore Craft Beer, State of the Beer, all of the beer podcasts and blogs, and all of our social things,
and our class schedule
and the class schedule. So you can keep all up to date. And until next week.
Now, I always forget this, and Tony really laughed at me when they came in today, because the saying, I've put it up on the wall in big letters, and it says, drink what you like and be happy.
Excellent. Thank you.